So what we're going to do is kick this off introducing the panel. We'll talk about the value of IT assessments, whether they're done internally or with partners like us. I'll be talking to our panel about their experiences with IT assessments, what works, what doesn't work, and then keep at least 15 minutes for Q&A, give you a chance to talk to our panel on questions you have, advice you're looking for, etc. Kennedy, the gentleman Kennedy will pass the mic around. Kennedy is one of our account executives who works in our kitchen office. So IT assessments, from my perspective, IT assessments are the one thing that is the difference between being proactive and getting a call at 2 o'clock in the morning on the weekend. So you need to do IT assessments regularly when you do it yourselves, or with partners like us, to make sure that things are running. Okay? Let me start with intros first. Roger Bruce, he leads our managed services organization for Quadbridge. The cool thing about Roger is he plays in a band and is a bass player. He's one of those quiet, solid bass players. The bass and the drums, keep a band together. Ask any band. It's the bassist and the drummer, right? Not the lead singer. Tim Green. Tim is one of our senior architects. He's also one of the few HP ACE gurus certified in Canada. Tim, interestingly, in his spare time, he volunteers for Streamkeepers, and Streamkeepers is an organization, it's non-for-profit, into salmon conservation. And Tim was talking about what they do, with respect to salmon conservation when you walk down this morning. So that's Tim. And Wojciech helps you save money. If you come by our booth today between 4 and 6, we're running what is called as a QBITS tool, and Wojciech there's an assessment around that, using the tool to help you make the right decisions in streamlining your Microsoft spend, your Microsoft licenses. Wojciech is also a dad that just had 2 kids, so when he's not selling and helping customers solve their licensing problems, he's trying to catch up on sleep. So, Roger, the first question for you. From your perspective, what makes a good IT assessment just beyond the data?
That's a great question, but before I answer, Wojciech saves money. Can you help me with the car insurance? Can we talk about it?
Maybe.
Okay. Perfect. So, it was really interesting, the keynote this morning, or just before the keynote, when we had the panel hosted by Steve, and you heard the team talking about the value of assessments and really knowing what you wanted as an outcome. By pure coincidence, we're talking about the value of assessments. So the key thing about assessments is just getting the data is the start. It's not the end, it's the start. What do you do with that data, and what is that data telling you? And as we work through our assessments, we've learned some really good things. The other value of the assessments is the breadth of the assessment. So you could take a look, for example, across your entire Microsoft portfolio, and then decide, this is where I'm going to prioritize my time and focus. And we'll come back to some of that in the later questions. But assessments really give you a good view to where you're at. As the saying goes, you can't improve what you can't measure. So establishing a baseline, understanding where you're at right now, where you're doing well, and some areas for focus.
Yeah, you mentioned, Roger, thank you, that's a very interesting perspective. You mentioned the breadth of assessment. So, when you're trying to adopt new tools like Copilot, you've heard of Copilot today, AI, right? Assessing a few things like the readiness across the organization to adopt Copilot. Not only technical readiness, but also cultural readiness, right? There's a lot of misconceptions about AI. The common thing being, it's going to take your job, right? So, assessing the use of AI and how best to get value from it begins with an assessment. Tim, you've sold and done assessments, around data centers. What has your experience been with from taking assessments from paper to actually delivering an assessment and delivering outcomes clients want to see?
Well, thank you, Al. Taking the assessment from just producing the report and then having actionable insights to put in place after the fact. It starts with what Roger was saying about knowing where you are and what you want to achieve. So just doing an assessment for the sake of doing an assessment may not be a great idea. What are you trying to get from that assessment? Are you having a performance problem? Are you trying to save costs? Are you trying to make big changes? Knowing what you're going to do or need to do helps drive what we're looking for when we do the actual assessment, and then makes it much easier to take the data and plan out, okay, here's what the changes we're going to implement. I do data centers, so I'm going to talk about data centers. So if we're going to right size our virtual machines, or we're going to fix a performance problem, or try and save costs somewhere along the line, knowing what we're trying to accomplish ahead of time makes the implementation of those changes go a lot better, because we actually have a plan moving forward. And two things that can go wrong. One is someone goes, oh my goodness, that's a huge report, all kinds of charts and data. It's a busy week, I'll look at it next week, and life goes on and no one ever actually looks at the report. That's problem one. Problem two is, oh great, look at all these changes we can make, let's slam them all in on Friday night. And then nothing works on Monday morning. So it's going to be very carefully implemented, small changes in a small subset, measure how does it go, does it look better, and then continue on from there. And then, what do we do after that? Another assessment. We've got a before and after.
That's fantastic. Actually, so measuring the value of the implementation or the consolidation or whatever it is, post-assessment is key to assess whether the assessment actually delivered what it promised, right? I forgot to actually advance the question, so forgive my ignorance. Tim, you've done assessments that involve data center consolidations, right? What are some of the lessons you've learned from those? And those can be pretty complex undertakings, right? Especially as customers gear up for adopting AI, right? And compute power that assessments need, data centers need for AI. That involves, everybody in this room that looking at AI should be looking at are our data centers ready, to adopt AI. What's your perspective on data center assessments that led to consolidations or actually upgrades, etc.?
It very quickly points out realities of the world we live in, which is typical response to this virtual machine doesn't perform well. Let's give it more memory, let's give it more CPU. That'll fix everything, which happens a lot, but we have big virtualized environments and everything has been oversized, which actually causes more problems. It's kind of counterintuitive, but giving too many resources up makes it harder for the hypervisor to actually do its job. So the assessments will actually tell us, these are all the virtual machines that are oversized. You've assigned it 8 CPUs, but it only needs 1. You've given it 50 gigs of memory, but it only needs 10. So we can shrink all that down. Your application vendors will say, no, don't do that. But the data tells us it never uses all that anyway, so why do that? Which, if you're planning on moving on-premise into the cloud, hey, you're going to save a whole lot of money on your cloud costs because we're putting up smaller virtual machines in the cloud. Or if we're replacing all the equipment, do we need to buy a huge amount of equipment, or can we buy a smaller amount of equipment and achieve the same performance?
Yeah, you talked about the cost savings and potential cost savings. That's definitely going to be what a CFO wants to hear. To get the budgets approved to do the work post-assessment. Wojciech, you've done assessments, and you've done assessments with on the Microsoft licensing spend. We know a lot of customers are overspending on Microsoft licensing, A, and B, they've got features and functionality with their Microsoft products that they're not making good use of completely, right? So from your experience, how have you worked with helping customers make the right decision on the SKUs that they need to buy?
Yeah, absolutely. So really comes down to every client is different, every client is unique from the business requirements, objectives. And when it comes to the Microsoft ecosystem, everybody knows there's a whole lot out there. It only gets messier every year. And so, of course, working with partners like us to give the guidance as to understanding what our customers need, we can make sure and align those exact features that are required. So that aligns totally with the particular SKUs. And as an example, we had one of our customers overpay in their eyes with the enterprise E3 SKU, and we looked at what they were really trying to accomplish, and the right size actually turned out to be a reduction in their, for across their majority of their users, where they didn't need 75% E3, we cut them down to the business premium SKU, and that saved them a lot of money, and still kept the whole business continuity and objectives with IT admin team, the security features that were there. So that's been one particular example of how we want to approach it.
We also find that customers have licenses that they're not using, right?
Right, exactly. So unused user onboarding process, there might be users that get still added, they get missed. How do we proactively look at that spend, that unnecessary spend, and remove? And in addition to that, it's a kind of an example as to you don't really know what you don't know about the environment, which these assessments shed light into those dark spots, right, for any kind of technological aspect. Microsoft is no different. So beyond the licensing, right, the portal that we use, our QBITS portal, make sure that you guys are set up from a secure perspective, right? If you have any unused sites, is there too much storage consumption, right? That's another cost on top. Already potentially overpaying by a particular licensing. So to shed light across all those different areas really results in a much more positive idea from spend and how that can be reduced and future changes that these business organizations have.
There's some common themes that Wojciech and Tim spoke about, Roger, directly with respect to the assessment that you do yourselves or with a partner like QBITS needs to include not only a roadmap, a technical roadmap, but also a TCO for that initiative, right? And an ROI, because that's how you're going to get the money approved from your CFO or your VP of finance or whatever to do what's required post-assessment. So I'm going to actually stop and continue with taking questions from all of you. I'm sure you have a ton of questions around IT assessments, our experience on doing them, your experience of doing them, what's worked, what hasn't worked. So I'll open the floor and give it to you to pose your questions. Kennedy will come around with the mic. Please raise your hands and feel free to ask us questions.
Thank you. Question would be, what are like the few assessments that every business should be doing regardless? Just a few assessments that's critical to every business.
That's a fantastic question. So thank you for bringing the brave soul to speak first. Thank you. Greg, take note. There's very much, and Tim and Wojciech will talk about this as well, but there are some key assessments that we found really resonate with customers. First of all, running 365, do an assessment of your 365 configuration from a security policies perspective. You can quickly address some security gaps and process improvements doing a 365 assessment. Security assessment, even a light security assessment, just to understand, are you a 1, are you a 5, where are you on the continuum, and where are the risks, as the team here have talked about. Security assessment is another one. Our data center and infrastructure assessment that Tim's well versed in is a great holistic view into the environment, whereas as both Tim and Wojciech have talked, then you can pinpoint, okay, we're okay with the risks here, this is the priority, this is where we need to go. I don't know if either of you would add anything else.
Yeah, I think one of the unsung or maybe not always thought about area is around storage consumption, right? from Azure resources to file servers whether they're on-prem, data center. Assessing that cost is critical because all of that leads to cleaner data, being more secure, knowing what its intent is for, allows you to control the future storage aspect. Right? So security is key. That ties in directly with how users interact with data on a day-to-day basis and can be a preventative, can prevent a cleaner deployment, let's say, for a product like Copilot, right, where it requires really pristine data to reflect that appropriate for the business, right, for the ROI. I think that's one additional factor that's
the one thing I would say is an assessment / health check for your Active Directory environment, whether it's on-prem, hybrid. That is something, to answer your question, I would recommend you do regularly. Right? AD health checks are invaluable, and you will be surprised what you find. Here's a question.
How often should we do these assessments?
How often should we do assessments? I would say at least every quarter. If we're talking about a data center assessment or other assessments, because that tells you when things are drifting from the normal. A data center assessment done regularly, it gives you a baseline. What is normal? What's behavior supposed to look like on a regular basis? Performance numbers, consumption numbers. Because when you actually have a problem and you start doing some troubleshooting, you see something goes, is that normal or isn't it normal? Pull out your assessment, well, yeah, that's normal, we can move on, look at something else.
Units. If Steve.
Yeah, so can you guys hear me okay? Yeah, so just on the, what you just talked about, what's normal? How do you quantify normal? I don't know if you can expand upon that a bit, because I know when we talk to clients about doing an assessment, oftentimes they ask us, well, like, do you guys benchmark? You know, how do you determine if I'm on-site or off-site? So can you expand on normal? What is normal and how you look at that?
Thanks, Steve. So, IT professionals, if they're well-versed in, say, a virtualized environment, there's some normal things that should be occurring. The number of virtual CPUs that you've assigned to your virtual machines as a ratio of your physical cores, it should be well under 4, depending on workloads. Typical consultant answer, it depends. 2.5 to 1 or 3 to 1 is pretty normal. We're also going to look at things like the latency. How long does it take the virtual machine to be able to read something off the disk? If it's under a certain amount, that's normal. If it's much higher than that, then we know we have a performance problem somewhere. So these are bits of statistics that are well known. So a few microseconds of latency is good. If it's milliseconds and tens of milliseconds, we have a problem. So a lot of it is knowing what's normal. If not a great answer, do you know what is a great answer? Google. What's normal latency? What should it be? You'll find a lot of really good information there. But you can look at that data and say, yeah, I'm within normal specifications, which is when you're trying to troubleshoot a problem at 2 in the morning, anything that can help you makes your life a whole lot easier, I think.
Yeah, maybe if I could pop on it. So normal will depend on the assessment that you're starting with. And one of the benefits of using a third party, be it for security or otherwise, to do that assessment is they have the benefit of looking across multiple environments, multiple customers. So that's where their normal benchmarks would start from. So as an example, if you're not familiar with a security assessment, if you go through the NIST level assessment, it's very normal for an organization on their first assessment to score a 1, maybe a 1.5 out of 5. So we just, through the repetition, we know that's normal. And the outputs are, this is what you need to do to get to a 3, to a 4. Same with when we do 365 assessments of your 365 environment. It's very normal for a customer to kind of be in 30 out of 100 as a starting point. An organization will get to 100 unless you want to throw tons and tons of money at it, and we don't recommend that anyway, but we know what those benchmarks are. They're within kind of the standards across multiple customers, and I'm sure Wojciech, Tim, you see the same ranges with the assessments that we do. You know what that normal threshold is, and then where we can go to improve on that.
You spoke about throwing money at it. I think there's a balance between spend and acceptable risk, right? And that's what assessments lead to. Basically, they're helping you make informed, data-driven decisions on the risk that your organization can live with, and those that you have to fix, have to address. Right? Any more questions?
If I could just expand a little bit further, depending on the assessment tool we're using for data center assessments, we can produce graphs. Here's your utilization for servers and storage, and then it'll show us what the industry average is. And the industry average is all the data they've measured throughout all the customers across the platform. So it'll actually show you that line, and you're here or you're either above it or below it. So that data is, you don't have to know it all, the data is actually there. It tells you if you're above or below, usually.
Steve?
Nope, just saying thumbs up, thank you.
That's good. Okay. It's been 2 days together, you don't give my name.
Thanks. Speaking in terms of assessments in cybersecurity, I often get approached to do penetration tests. I just wonder what's the frequency of that type of assessment should our businesses be looking to?
Fantastic question. Pen tests, that type of thing, deep web scanning, we really recommend minimum twice per year. Things change quickly.
Yeah, I would say, what is right, twice a year minimum, and overall vulnerability scanning of the entire environment at least once a year. It also helps in driving cyber insurance, premiums down. You tell the insurer, and you can prove you do that regularly. We have 5 minutes left, and no one's asking questions. I've got a question for esteemed panelists. You talk to customers every day, do assessments. Tim, what customers told you about one thing they would change about assessments? I'm guessing it's because it didn't deliver the value they were hoping it would deliver.
What is one thing a customer would change about assessments? I actually can't think of one, because the tools we have today are actually quite simple to use. Different tools do different things and behave differently, but there's one that I like to use called Cloud Physics. We install it and just leave it there. It can run for 60 days, 90 days, 120 days. So we don't need to rerun it every 7 days or every month or something to call the administrator, send them a new link, have them install some new software once every week or two. We can just install a virtual appliance and just let it run. So if I could twist the question a little bit, what I do here is concerns about security, because we're taking data out of your environment and we're actually putting it up into a cloud portal for the analysis. If I could do the analysis myself, I probably have a lot of money in the bank. The tools will grab the data from your environment. Let's just talk about what we're grabbing. We're just getting inventory and performance, and that's it. We're not getting your passwords, we're not getting your accounting department spreadsheets. We're just looking at, here's a list of your equipment, your inventory, here's the performance. And the performance numbers are what your operating systems and your management platforms like vCenter, they're just saying, here's the performance numbers, please take them. So we're just grabbing them, we're sending it up to a cloud portal, that's where the analysis happens. It's all done securely, no one has access to it without the correct permissions. So we're not giving someone outside the environment the ability to go into your environment. It's one-way path going out securely and very minimal data.
You actually hit the nail on the head when it comes to expectation setting, right? So I think the business know that the data is not leaving the environment, critical data. We're not accessing any of the data. And also I would say, I've found assessments actually going south is when you haven't set the right expectations with the business that's funding the assessment, right? So you've talked to your teams, they know what they're going to do from an assessment perspective. but the business that's sponsoring the assessment was expecting something else, right? So aligning and making sure that the expectations from the assessment are aligned across the organization, especially when it comes to the bigger ones, you know, security, data center consolidations, data center migrations, you know, moving things to the cloud, etc. All that has to be, we've got to make sure that the business signs up and they're aligned with what the assessment is going to deliver. That the right expectations set internally, and you produce the outcomes, you're going to get less pushback with respect to getting approvals to move ahead post-assessment.
Yeah, if I could maybe just top up on that question, it's a great question, Al. You know, what would we do different? Another key piece of feedback I've had from customers is the timing of when you do that assessment. In other words, get those assessments done as you're starting to move into your budgeting cycle for the next year, because the outcome of the assessments are recommendations on projects' priorities. So you'll want those outputs of the assessment to build into your budgeting cycle for the next year. So that's clearly one piece of feedback I've had from customers. It's, hey, this is great information. I need it in 6 months when I start my budgeting cycle. Can we revisit the conversation at that time?
Or if the assessment finds something glaring and they miss the budget cycle, they now have to go back and say, listen, hey, we didn't do this in time, so can you give us money that wasn't planned for to do this, that's needed, because there's a gap that customers can't do it. Anything else? Any more questions?
One of the questions I have is, with moving to the cloud providers like Microsoft for all the infrastructure, they have their own built-in assessment tools, and they do the analysis on time-to-time basis. Do you still think we should then in-house or like any third-party assessment other than the Microsoft provided ones to just check on this?
So we've got a customer that I would describe as very advanced in Azure. And in fact, as he was pushing Microsoft in the last 18 months on some of the requirements he had, he was being told globally nobody else was pushing the envelope like he was. We're actually on a weekly call with him just to review the environment. Yes, we rely, and he relies heavily on those Microsoft tools, but much like I said earlier, having a third party, you know, not Microsoft employed, look at the data just to say, okay, this makes sense to me, maybe tweak that. It never hurts. I'm not suggesting you need to do it weekly, but it's good to just have another set of eyes on things, either within your team or you engage a partner to do so, to make sure that you're interpreting the data correctly and not with a particular bias, if you know what I mean. Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, I think that's a wrap. Thank you everybody for for attending the session, and get your copies and get ready for a fantastic evening. It's going to be, in one word, epic.